Hey guys, I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet. This is the first part of what is probably going to be 2 or 3 videos. What I'm going to talk about in this one is the chapters 6, 7, and 9 from the Psychology of Creative Writing, which I wanted to get to you guys a while ago, but my life has been pretty hectic lately. So, to start, what this is going to cover and what kind of the overall theme of those chapters are is creativity and the evolution of creative writing, but then also the creativity of the writer. So what I have here on this first slide, what I want to show you, this is kind of one of the overarching themes, and it's something that I can relate to on a very personal level. I'm not sure where where the webcam image is going to be, probably down here. So you're probably not going to be able to see this dialogue here, but I'm going to send you you have the PowerPoint, so you can read this. But this is from the show Californication, which is one of my favorite shows. It just ended, but it's about a novelist and screenwriter named Hank Moody in California, in Los Angeles, who at the beginning of the series battles with extreme writer's block due to the dissolution of his relationship that is very much like a marriage. And at this point in my life, it's almost scary how similar it is to my life. I personally have not been able to write since April because of everything that's happened in my personal life. But this quote here it's a dialogue between Hank Moody, the main character, the writer, and his lawyer. And they're out at dinner. This is in season 4 of the show, towards the end of season 4. But she says to him, "You can't have it both. The white picket fence and the dark swirling chaos." And then Hank says, "What if one feeds the other?" And Abby's response is, "What if one destroys the other?" And this is very true for a lot of creative people. And as we go through this video lecture, I'm going to tell you um, as much as I responsibly can about my own experience with these things, but also the experience of several writers whom I know. And writers often, unfortunately, we are often very chaotic, self-destructive people. Um, I don't know if I can think of any of my writer friends, maybe one or two, who have not battled with self-destructive behavior, substance abuse, alcoholism, promiscuity, which is touched a lot in here, infidelity, those sorts of things. And I personally have struggled with a lot of those. I'm not going to tell you which ones because don't want you to think that about me. But it's just part of who we are in the psychology of creative writers. Now over here, this is Charles Bukowski, one of my favorite writers. He died in 1994. He was a poet, short story writer, novelist, and he was very much a student of Ernest Hemingway's. He wrote in he went through several periods in his literary career. He was a realist. He wrote very stylistically similar to Hemingway. And then he went through a postmodern period where his style changed very much. But he always wrote about his own experiences living in Los Angeles his whole life. He died of alcoholism. He died of liver failure, I believe. It was either cirrhosis or liver failure, and I'm pretty sure he had hepatitis C. But this is this is just one of the many similar photos you find of Bukowski. Him drinking, giving readings, writing, smoking. He was a notorious womanizer. He went through several marriages, several relationships, and unfortunately, he ended up dying very poor. But now, his writing, he's considered one of the greatest 20th century writers. But at the time of his death, his writing was so experimental and so outside the realm of widestream literature, or mainstream literature, I mean, that he did not have a lot of respect in the literary community. But now he's considered one of the greatest writers of the last 100 years. And this is him around 1985. Okay, So, the evolution and culture of creative writing. Um, now, uh, hopefully you all remember these three chapters. But creative writing and writing in general was a cultural invention. It evolved in human culture, but it's a cultural invention dating back to ancient Sumeria and ancient Egypt. The actual purpose of written language it's originally believed that written language was invented to so that cultures could record their history, um, but also to communicate with others through distances, through geographic distance. Um, and what's really interesting that the book details is that cultural innovations that evolve within a society, they depend on the innovation catching on with a significant portion of the population, or else it does not become widespread. So, um, this is an interesting way to think of reading and writing, because most of you guys probably think of it as a chore that you have to do, as an academic task that you have to do. But it was originally invented as a way of recording social history, but then it caught on and became widespread because of the enjoyment, because of the importance of it. Um, and then the book breaks down the enjoyment from literature and the enjoyment from writing. And what's really interesting about this is primate societies in general, but more so obviously with humans, is that one of the ways that we have evolved as primates, but also as humans, that has made us the dominant species on the planet, and this goes hand in hand with the evolution of larger brains, the evolution of intelligence, but then empathy. Empathy is a defining characteristic of primate societies and a defining characteristic of human society. Our ability to empathize with others has drastically influenced our evolution over the past, 20,000 years. Um, Empathy is what has made humanity survive. There's actually a lot of research out there about the psychological triggers of a crying baby, the emotional response it evokes in humans. And a crying human baby also evokes emotional responses in chimpanzees. I believe there's research out there on orangutans too. Um, so our ability to empathize has made us more aware of danger, of social cues, all of those things. Um, and as such, we derive enjoyment from literature because of empathy. We empathize with the characters, we root for the characters, and we often want the characters to succeed, even if, and this is more of a modern thing, even if they are absolutely horrible, despicable people. Think of Breaking Bad, think of Orange is the New Black, think of American Psycho. All of these narratives contain characters that we absolutely do not empathize. We should not empathize with, because they are actually the villains of the story, but we still root for them. And then that also elicits a strange response in us, in that we don't want to root for them, but we do. Another part of the enjoyment from literature is imagining new experiences and situations. Um, and this is more of a modern concept, in that we derive enjoyment from situations and experiences that we ourselves would not find ourselves in, or experiences that we would not have in our own lives. Um, think of any type of genre fiction. Think of mystery, action, fantasy stuff. These things are all scenarios in which we most likely would not find ourselves. But then in more literary fiction is the fiction of life, is literally what it means. Literary fiction is fiction of everyday life, and a lot of writers trend towards this kind of writing, tend to write in this way, because we often and we'll get to this here in a few minutes, we often put ourselves into our writing. We put a lot of ourselves into our writing, and a lot of us use writing as a form of self-therapy or self-medication. I personally take experiences from my life and use those as inspiration for stories. And often, when something bad happens to me, I envision how I would have liked that scenario to have played out, and that's often the seed to my own writing. But as a reader, we want to imagine these new experiences and situations. We want to empathize with our characters. We get emotional fulfillment out of these things. Now, from the writer's point of view, enjoyment from writing. Ambition is a huge part of this. It takes a very, 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 very long time to develop the skills necessary to be a successful writer. It takes a very long time to create a long piece of writing. It took me, I'm still not finished. I'm working on, I haven't touched it in months, but I was in the middle of a new draft of my first novel, which I have now been working on for 5 years. My second novel I've been working on for about a year. So it's a huge time commitment to create a piece of writing. Interestingly, Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club, he was criticized very heavily about his book Haunted, which came out in like 2005. It's very, it has a lot of gratuitous violence in it, and his response to reviewers was that it's much easier to condemn an act of creation than to perform one. And that's very true. It's very easy for us to say that piece of art sucks, or that song sucks, or that story sucks, or that book sucks. But think of the time, effort, and energy that went into creating that. Personality dispositions. This is a huge part of creative writing and of being a creative writer. We'll get much more into the psychology of the creative writer later, but from earlier in the textbook, you know that creative writers are much more prone to addiction, to substance abuse, to depression, to psychosis, to hallucinations, delusions, to self-destructive behavior, to suicidal ideation, to attempted suicide and successful suicide. So the big question that we have to ask ourselves is, do these personality dispositions influence the creativity of the writer, or does the lifestyle of the writer, being a writer is very lonely, you spend a lot of time alone, you spend a lot of time in a state of chaos. Does the act of writing create these personality dispositions? Self-medication and self-therapy. Writers typically are statistically much more likely to develop, to have addictive personalities and to struggle with addictive behavior. That being said, writing itself can become addicting, and we'll talk about the high from writing later. So often we work through our own issues in our writing, self-medication and self-therapy, but we also derive psychological enjoyment out of these things. Some research suggests that dopamine is released during writing, which is the same neurotransmitter that's released when using heroin, those type of things. So this is why we get enjoyment out of writing. And then agency is the last one. Let me find this section in here about agency. I'm going to pause this for a second because I'm running out of time. Okay, writers, I'm going to make this really fast because I'm running out of time. Writers also develop a sense of agency from writing, which is the ideal that we have control over our own destiny, so to speak, that we have control over our own place in the world. So we derive social status and social recognition and social pleasure from writing. All right, I'm going to stop this here, and there'll be another video right after.